Welcome back to Hannah's Harvest. Today we're working in the garden and we're already more than halfway through August, which is crazy. It seems like time is really flying. But today I was out in the garden and I got to thinking about just how the garden has continued to produce and work hard regardless of my skill level. And I've been gardening now for about 5 years, and this year my vegetable garden is more productive than ever, and I'm really proud of everything that it's produced, and I'm proud of how much I've grown as a gardener in these past 5 years. And today I wanted to take you with me as I'm doing a couple just really mundane and simple things in the garden. I'm going to be looking for places that leaves need to be cut off, just kind of cleaning up, and then also doing some fertilizing. And I want to show you one of my most used garden tools. One of my daily garden chores is taking my clippers with me and just doing some garden cleanup. So I'm starting by cutting off any flowers that are past their prime. I really try to stay on top of my zinnias, that way I can maximize the bloom production. So when I cut off the old blooms, the flowers can focus their energy on making new flowers. On my zinnias, I also look for any yellowing, spotted, or just damaged looking leaves, and I pull those off. Especially toward the end of the growing season, my zinnias start to look a little bit tired. I find that this daily maintenance in the garden helps keep it looking prime. These spots on my zinnias are indicative of a disease, and so I also want to help prevent that from spreading to any other plants in the garden by removing those affected leaves. I really like spending time in the garden, so I actually look for things I can do each day. If you don't have time to work in your garden every day, then you might work on garden maintenance once a week or every 2 weeks or so. So I'm going to start this morning with fertilizing, and this summer I've had really good luck with the Espoma Garden Tone fertilizer. I've been using it as it recommends on the package every month, and the way I like to do this is get some gardening gloves and I just sprinkle a little bit at the base of all my plants, in my raised beds especially. And I found that because my plants are so close together, it's been really helpful to have good garden food for them so that they can continue to grow and flourish and do their very best all season long. So on the package it recommends using gloves, and I definitely would recommend that too. This fertilizer is stinky, and it's something that if you have pets, dogs especially, I know my dog loves it. So after I apply it, I make sure to water it in really good so that she's not tempted to eat it off of the top of the soil. And so I'll just show you what this fertilizing looks like. I just have my handful, and I'm going to just sprinkle it lightly around the base of my plants. Garden Tone is organic and it works for herbs and vegetables. I also use it for my strawberries, but I do know that Espoma makes products specifically for berries. They have a berry tone. They also have rose tone, flower tone. They have several different products. So if you're not vegetable gardening, you might check out their other products that they have. Might be more beneficial for you. So if you're growing vegetables and fruit especially, it's really important that you fertilize because most of the things we grow in our vegetable garden are annuals. They're only lasting one season, and we want to make sure to give them plenty of food so they can be at their peak production. And to be honest, this is the first year that I've actually been intentional about fertilizing. I really thought before that if I had good compost and good soil, I wouldn't need to. And the thing about that is, with things like perennials, things that come back year after year, they're not using as much food as things like vegetables. We want for them to be as productive as they can be for the time that they're in our garden. So, something as simple as investing in a $10 bag of plant food can really increase your harvest and make your garden more successful. Now, things like flowers in the garden, my zinnias and marigolds, they don't really need fertilizer, at least in my experience, to be productive. So I don't worry so much about fertilizing them, but especially things like tomatoes and peppers that are in the ground from spring all the way through fall, I really focus on fertilizing. Also, the fertilizer bag recommends fertilizing through the growing season. So, because we're getting near to the end of August, this will be the last time I fertilize my garden. Plants that grow in the fall typically don't need as much food, but as I replant, I'll fertilize as needed. But I'm really winding down my garden for the year, and so this will be the last month that I really need it to push production before in October it starts cooling down. So, two common questions about water in the garden is how much to water and when to water. And it's funny because there are these cult rules that people have, these hard and fast, do this and do that, and your garden will be successful. And I think gardening is so much more than rule following. So for me, what I tend to do is water early in the morning or late in the evening. I don't water in the heat of the day just because I want my plants to have plenty of time to soak up the water before the temperature gets hot and they get stressed. Knowing how much to water is really dependent on your climate and environment. In the early spring, when it rains a lot, I might not water at all. But in the heat of summer, sometimes I water twice a day to keep my plants happy. So I typically look at my plants in the evening to determine how much water they need. After the sun has gone down and the heat of the day is cooling down, if my plants look dry and tired, I'll water them. But if they look like they're still happy, I'll leave them alone for that day. Here's a really good example of plants that need water. These marigolds are in a shallow pot that doesn't have very good water retention, so I really should probably water them every day. Same for this blackberry. I really think it needs to be potted in the ground, and while it's in this pot, it's been in this pot for 3 years, it's becoming unhappy, and so I like to water it every single day to keep it hydrated. One of my most used garden tools are gardening gloves, and my favorites are these green ones on the left. I like the way that I can use them in a variety of purposes. So my favorite part about them is that they're waterproof on the inside, so my hands stay dry when I'm digging in the dirt. They're also nice and stretchy and comfortable. I think the brand is Nitrile Soft Touch. I think that's what they're called. This pink pair is my least favorite. They're just cheapy cloth garden gloves, and the water goes right through them. They're not very useful. And my cutest pair is kind of a love-hate for me. I really like them for chores like picking up sticks, and because they have the touch pads, I can still use my phone while I'm wearing them. But because they are suede, they're not very good for digging in the dirt and things like that. So if you're going to buy one pair of garden gloves, I'd recommend something similar to this green pair that I have. They're the ones that I use by far the most. And when it comes to garden snips, I don't think the brand matters as much. I'm loving right now these Fiskars brand snips. But I think the most important thing is getting a pair of snips that are really good quality. So I like to wash these with soap and water every couple weeks, but it's definitely worth the investment to get one nice pair of clippers that you can use year after year instead of having to replace cheap ones every year. If you only have the budget for one garden tool, I'd recommend getting a good pair of clippers. They're my most used garden tool every season. Well, if you're new to gardening or new to growing food, I hope you'll be encouraged that it's good to experiment and learn from your garden. If we all approach our gardens as a learning space, then we'll continue to grow with each gardening season. Remember that you don't have to follow exact rules or an exact science. Just invest some time, do some research, and do what works well for you. If you have a specific strategy or product that works really well, please leave it in the comments below so we can learn from each other. And thanks again for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it.